It's been a ridiculous policy for way too long. My only question is what took so long? And why even was this policy under Heil Steinbrenner prolonged in the first
It's
place?
at the Inside Scoop with FT Senior Insider Ken Rosenthal. Ken, good to see you. I'll start with a signing that we didn't get to yet and we'll talk about later. It's not the world's biggest, but it's 1 year, $5 million for Andrew Heaney to join the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're still spending a little bit of money right now. What was your thought on that signing and just any overall thoughts on the Pirates, as we haven't talked about them in a minute?
Just looking at it from Heaney's perspective, obviously the money's not where he would have wanted it to be. I would think he would have wanted somewhere in the $10 million range. He's a pretty accomplished pitcher in his own way. He's not an ace, I get it, but he is someone that you would have thought in a market that originally was quite hot for starting pitchers might have done better. But what's interesting about this to me is he gets to join a rotation that is pretty good, right? Jared Jones, Mitch Keller, and Paul Skeens. So now you add Heaney to that, and for the Pirates, that's a pretty formidable group. Now, I still question their offense. Their big offensive addition, Spencer Horwitz, is already hurt. They didn't really do much else. I don't like the way the team is run, and we've all talked about that for years now. But this signing at that price should be pretty good for them.
Was this based on the fact that you can't find a position player for five whatever point million dollars, and so they're like, well, it kind of looks good because we're adding to our depth? Is that really the only option, or was it something that they were pursuing other pitchers and this is just the first one to offer or to accept this low of an offer?
I'm not quite sure, Eric, how that has played out for them. Obviously, they've been on both position players and pitchers. There was a report by Robert Murray last night that they originally had pursued Jose Quintana. Now, I don't expect Quintana's going to sign for $5 million, just as I don't expect Kyle Gibson, if he signs, will sign for $5 million or anything like that. But maybe I'm wrong, and maybe these guys ultimately will have to be forced to settle for these lesser deals. But from the Pirates' perspective, I don't imagine, Eric, that it was we've got $5 million and this pitcher will take it, so we can't get a position player for that. They are who they are, and they should have spent more on position players, period, this offseason, and did not.
All right. Ken, when was the last time you had a beard?
Never.
Never. So you have been the one pushing the facial hair policy for the Yankees. We knew it. We knew there was somebody behind every move in baseball, and we didn't think this was you, Ken, but it is you. The Yankees changing their facial hair policy, and Hal kind of stuck his flag in the midfield of the Yankees' own field and said, I'm ultimately the one that makes this decision. Do you know any of the background of how long this decision was being mulled over by the man, the king, Hal?
I don't. And it's very curious to me that it's coming out on this day. Why wouldn't you have announced this January 30th before the players got to camp? But this is what they're doing. And Hal Steinbrenner said he consulted with several players and former players about this. I don't know that he would have gotten any different answer if he had consulted with players and former players 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, going back to the days of Don Mattingly when he was fighting with the Yankees over facial hair. It's been a ridiculous policy for way too long. My only question is what took so long? And why even was this policy under Heil Steinbrenner prolonged in the first place? I just don't understand this whole thing from start to finish. This Yankee pride stuff. My friend Joel Sherman pointed out at one point, well, Yankee pride, they've already put some advertising on the uniform, the Nike swoosh. They've also moved from one Yankee stadium to the other to the other. They've had three different Yankee stadiums. This tradition stuff, why did it have to include the hair? That didn't really make much sense to me.
Are you saying the Yankees' moral degradation is going downhill because they've changed the stadium, they've changed the beard policy, the advertisement? What next? What's the next thing? Are they going to have names on the back of their jersey to sell a few more, Ken?
Hell, I don't know about that, Eric. Can't do that. But but this whole idea of this Yankee tradition, yeah, we get it. The Yankees do have tradition. I don't know that the tradition was perpetuated by the no facial hair policy, but today it ended a merciful Or it met a merciful demise, put it that way.
Ooh, look at you, man, and your facial hair talk. I don't like facial hair, as you can tell. So
it doesn't like you.
Anyway, I want to go to your article you wrote about Justin Verlander and Buster Posey, explaining, hey, listen, I don't want you to be a mentor here. I'm paraphrasing here. We want you here basically because we know how good you are and we want you to get back to being great. Can you dive in a little bit more about that conversation and what Buster Posey and Verlander were talking about?
Yes, I conducted a bunch of interviews for Fox earlier this week that will be put together later in the season when we have the Giants on Fox. And in those conversations, that's what Posey said to me. Hey, when I went after this guy, it wasn't simply to be the father figure to the staff. It was because I believe he can be Justin Verlander, maybe not the Justin Verlander of 2006 or even 2022 or whatever, but someone who is really, really good. And Verlander clearly believes that as well. And so far, it's early, I know, but he seems to be recovered from his neck and shoulder problems from last year. He's feeling good about himself. And his goal still is 300 wins. And I don't know that he'll get there. He's 38 shy. But if there's ever a guy you want to bet on, it's him. And he keeps himself in great shape. He told me he wants to pitch until he's 45. He just turned 42 yesterday. It's not a set goal or anything like that, but he always idolized Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan pitched until he was 46. So with Verlander, guys, I just find him so fascinating. He has such a history in the game. He has made so much history in the game. And to see him now, and Max Scherzer the same with Toronto, to see these guys trying again and trying to get back to where, or at least close to where they used to be, that to me is pretty cool.
Ken, Justin's going to pitch until Kate says it's okay for him to keep pitching. Okay, so that's how it will go for Justin. And if he wants to compete with that, I understand. They're doing a tour of the cities. Where were you, Ken, when you saw the first challenge of the ABS system? And was it just as insurmountable of a moment in your life as you thought it would be?
It was not, because I was writing the Verlander column at the time. So I wasn't actually paying attention to that. But it's going to be really interesting, Eric, to see how this plays out. And as a former catcher, I am sure you are quite intrigued by this whole thing and how catchers strategically will pick their times to challenge. Now, it's the catchers, the pitchers, and the hitters. They all have the ability to challenge. No one else does, and you have to do it immediately. And I was really interested reading Jason Stark's article yesterday in The Athletic about how in the minor leagues, when they've had this challenge system on ABS, pitchers basically were told, no, you can't do this. Don't do this. You mess it up. Because pitchers always think, I guess, that the pitches are strikes and they don't have the best angle on some of them. But catchers and how they choose and when they choose to challenge, that's going to be really interesting, and how they just go about this. Now, one thing I'm kind of curious about is, obviously in spring training, you're just looking to see if this thing works okay and if the system works okay. And they'll tweak it from here if indeed players embrace it. But the strategy part of it, the spots you pick, that would be different in the regular season than it would be in a spring training game. So that's one thing that we won't necessarily get a great feel for, how it would play out in a regular season game. But I'm interested to see how this all goes this spring.
All right, Ken, I heard you call my name out yesterday on Fair Territory because I mentioned how, wait, ready? I think I was right on this. Wait, I mentioned how I'm like, hey, if this is so good and this works so well,
yes,
can we just implement it in the league now? And you said no, it's got to go through a whole process, competition committee, etc. I get that, but also, this isn't the 10 Commandments or some crazy Bible thing or something like that. I mean, the point is, I'm like, why do we make these things up? Like, of course we could not do this. We need to do our whole 1 year process, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, why? If it's awesome and everyone loves it and it looks good enough, let's get on a freaking, Google Meet or a Zoom and say, hey guys, we all like this. Good. All right. We'll get it set up in the ballparks because I think fans are going to love it. So why wait a year?
Because the CBA states that there's a competition committee that has to vote, and if they approve it, it has to be a situation where 45 days notice is given. It used to be a year, and it's changed in recent times. That's a reasonable amount of time, I think, to have this kind of window. But to do it right away, Scott, even if it worked great, I know the scenario you're describing, it makes sense, right? If this is great, what's the delay? But I don't expect it's going to be completely great. And I expect that there will be some tweaks needed, some improvements, some adjustments. And I don't know that you want to rush into it, even if it works out really well. So again, let's see how it plays out, first of all. But that's what the CBA says. And you can't just break the CBA unless, I guess, if the league went to the union and said, hey, let's do this, then if the union said yes, I guess they could just abandon what they have in
Yeah, why
there,
not?
but I don't see that happening.
More in a minute, but first, a quick word from our sponsor of this video. Kratz, what time is it?
Time to stop overpaying for wireless with these bogus fees and, quote, free perks that actually cost more in the long run. You know what I'm saying?
What he's saying is it's time to switch to Mint Mobile with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. Just check it out. See how much you can cut off your cell phone bill. Go to mintmobile.com/territory.
No unexpected overages on those bills. You get all the bells and whistles too. And I love that all plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. And you bring over your current phone number when you switch. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/TERRITORY. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month, 5 gigabyte plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. And now back to the video.
One of the YouTube questions that we had from I'm not even going to say it. Sorry, I can't even say it. I don't even know what the name is. I feel like I'm going to say a bad name, so I'm not going to read it. But the question is, which remaining free agent do you think is coming off the board next?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I do know some of the names that are still out there. And Quintana would be the obvious choice here to say the one that's coming off the board next, because he probably is the best one still remaining. I mentioned Kyle Gibson before. Lance Lynn is still out there. Alex Verdugo, from a position player standpoint, is still out there as well. So if I had to guess an answer, I would say Quintana. There are teams interested in him, as there should be teams interested in him. He had like a 3.11 ERA in the second half last year. I don't know what is the problem. I know what the problem is. He doesn't miss enough bats. That's the rap on certain guys now. But you know what? Not all pitchers do it the same way. And Jose Quintana is a pretty good pitcher and did a decent job for the Mets last year. He should be signed. The other guy that is someone to watch is David Robertson. I'm not sure what his intentions are, but he is the best reliever still out there.
I mean, it's always obviously a battle about price. We had Lance Lynn on the show not long ago, and he's like, yeah, I mean, I've got a number in my head. I've got to hit that number. His leverage is pitch for a while, got a lot of money, not desperate. I can wait things out. Curious as to your take on where we're at this point. I know we're into spring training. Is it pitchers maybe waiting for a team to unfortunately suffer an injury and say, okay, we need to get up to this value number? Because on the other side, some of the pitchers you mentioned seem to be in a similar tier. And my guess is that the offers might be more in that Andrew Heaney 5 range, and that group wants to get closer to the 15 range that people like Cobb, Scherzer, Verlander got, and even settling in the middle. My guess is right now the way teams play is, yeah, we'll give you the 1 year 5, and they want at least 10. Just kind of putting some easy numbers on it.
Scott, from what I've heard, it's not even 5. That's not the number they're proposing to these guys. It's lower. It's 2 or 3. And if you're Lance Lynn, and maybe even if you're Kyle Gibson, one, you don't want to sell yourself short and take a number that you don't think is representative of who you are. 2, if you're one of those guys, now granted, they're not gazillionaires, but they've made money in their careers, and they don't necessarily want to play for that amount of money. Now, to me, it's a lot of money. To you guys, it's a lot of money. To everyone watching and listening, it's a lot of money. But baseball players, like all of us, measure themselves in a relative sense to their peers. And $2 million for a Lance Lynn or a Kyle Gibson is not representative in their minds, I'm sure, of who they are. So that is the issue. And yes, as injuries occur, you may see teams get a little more antsy. And you might see teams that have been holding back payroll finally say at some point, you know what, we need someone else. And I would put Milwaukee in that regard, perhaps. They need someone else. Maybe at some point they'll figure that out and get a starter or a reliever, better yet, both.
Ken, usually on this show, we're all business, and then AJ makes fun of you. So I want to ask a nice, fun Friday question. Okay? What state is your favorite state to go to spring training? Is it Arizona or is it Florida?
If you ask any writer this question, I believe, other than the ones who might reside in Florida, you're going to hear Arizona. And Arizona is preferable for us as writers simply because of the proximity of the camps. It's a much more compact area. It's essentially the Phoenix greater metropolitan area. The furthest drive from any one point to the other is probably no more than an hour. Where in Florida, you're going all over the state. Now, there are central, or I should say, different areas of Florida where teams are, for the most part, located. Down in Fort Myers, there are the Red Sox, the Twins. The Rays are not far away. The Braves are not far away, going a little bit further north. Then you have the Orioles and Pirates in the Sarasota, Bradenton area, and then a few teams in Tampa, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Phillies. The Tigers are not far away. And then the East Coast, you've got the Mets, you've got the Cardinals, the Marlins, the Nationals, and I'm probably forgetting one or two. So there are concentrated areas, yeah, but it's not as convenient as Arizona is. So that's my preference. That's nothing against the state of Florida per se. It's just against the way the thing's set up, and it's just easier in Arizona.
And then last question from me and everybody else. What is the best spring training site that you really enjoy and love during the spring?
I would say it used to be Dodger Town, back when the Dodgers were in Vero Beach. But right now, my guess would be the Giants in Scottsdale. And they have kind of a quaint stadium. It's sort of in the middle of downtown Scottsdale, right off to the side. So that's a really good one. I also love, in terms of just the facility and the beauty of the facility, Salt River Field, where the Rockies and Diamondbacks are. It's one of my favorite places, period, to go. It's just beautiful there. And then in Florida, I don't know which one I would say is my favorite. They're all kind of similar.
The Red Sox made themselves. Oh, Yankees.
The Red Sox have a nice place. I mean, they're all nice, and there's nothing wrong with any of them. The Braves is beautiful. It's just kind of out of the way. And the Phillies in Clearwater and the Yankees in Tampa, those are cool places to go.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. And Red Sox, I like that they make a little Fenway action out of it. I just like the replica where you're like, oh, I get the feel of the big league park here. But cool. Awesome. Well, there you go. That was a nice, fun, easy segment there to finish. Ken, thank you very much for the time. Good to see you as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.